This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 13th, 2022 South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners Workshop. Tonight, our topic is open space and land preservation. I will call this meeting to order. We have all commissioners present this evening. I do want to formally acknowledge and thank our guests for being here tonight. We have Donna Wright from the Lehigh County Land Preservation. She's a specialist. We have John Mauser from Lower Mount Bethel Township and Jason Smith from Bushkill Township. To get our meeting started, if you all would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to announce that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners meetings are electronically recorded, filed, and posted to our website for public access. Randy, if you would please read our virtual and public meeting rules.
Sure. Courtesy of the floor for this evening is at the end of the agenda. It's the board's pleasure if we'd like to have it in the beginning as well, but it is not on our agenda this evening. So it is included at the end. For all listed agenda items, the board president will call for courtesy of the floor prior to the Board of Commissioners taking action on any specific agenda item. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized and move to the podium. When directed, you will then be asked to state your name and address for the record and may then proceed with asking your question. For those participating virtually tonight, please keep your microphones and telephones on mute to avoid any background noise that may cause interference with the meeting. The chat box feature will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address into the chat box. The staff member monitoring the GoToMeeting will then unmute your microphone and you can then proceed with asking your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We'll move on to our workshop. Then the first item A, Dave Manhart, who is our Director of Community Development, is going to review township resources with us before we get started.
So I just wanted to do a brief introduction, kind of set the stage for the next speakers that we have. I promise not to talk as much as I did last night. We had the comp plan workshop on resource protection, and we had a very good discussion and talked a lot about some of the tools that we could use. And it's going to be exciting to hear some examples and other tools that other communities have used. So that's going to be great to hear tonight. So last night, one of the topics that came up, we were reviewing goals and strategies. And one of the strategies that came up is identify and prioritize resources that are important to the unique characteristics of the township. So the first step is really to identify what we want to protect. So being the GIS guy, I went through and started mapping as much as I could. So we have the aerial photo. You recall during the where should we grow exercises with the dots, we had people prioritize areas that were worth protecting. So that shows up in here. So you can kind of see the Jordan Valley is a high priority, and these can get worked into a model where we prioritize. This can be an input into that model. And the idea with GIS is we can overlay all of these layers and give different scores to things and come up with a prioritization. So I just kind of want to really quickly go through this. We have developed areas. So one of the things that we talked about last night is developed and parcel related development with open space on those, as opposed to preserving large tracts. And there's different strategies for all of that. So one of the things I looked at was developed areas. So this is a map that shows developed areas, which is considered, it's impervious coverage, and then there's a buffer around that impervious coverage. So it gives us an idea of where the areas are developed. And then the next slide shows areas that are not developed. So these are generally large areas of the township that fall in. Tables are not showing up. No, next slide. It's on the next slide. There it is. So when you put it all together, we get an idea of how many acres are developed, how many are undeveloped, and total acreage. So we're about 2/3 developed. Again, it's based on GIS and some buffering, so the numbers aren't by any means exact at this point. These are kind of first runs at all of this, but at least gives us an idea of what we're looking at and what we're talking about. So that gives us our developed and undeveloped. And then the next slide, we have Woodlands. We talked last night about preserving farmland is often what is talked about. But there's other open space that's worth protecting. Natural habitat, riparian areas, woodlands being one of those. So here's a woodlands map, total acreage of woodland, and then different types of woodland, and we can get into that later, but there's different types for wildlife habitat and things like that. Steep slopes we talk about. So this was normally steep slopes are based on soils maps. This is actually based on LiDAR, so actual elevation. So it's depicting actual slopes. Gives us an idea of how much area there is. Hydrology, so floodplains, wetlands, all in here. Again, areas worth protecting. So this all can get overlaid and we get an idea of what areas are worth protecting and prioritize those areas. More resources for protection are historic sites. Most of this data came from our official map. So the comp plan, I believe, lists a few more historic resources. So we'll go through and we'll add to these maps and make sure we have a good catalog of historic resources and other resources. Next slide is the agriculture layers. We have ag soils, so prime farmland soils and farmland of statewide importance are the two categories for the NRCS soils layer. And then the LVPC has a really good agricultural lands layer. We started working on it, but we were using a 10-acre threshold, so we're going to actually get that a little more accurate and get more farmland added to that layer. Next slide is the natural heritage areas. So these are areas that natural heritage inventory is done statewide, where they identify significant natural habitat. So in South Whitehall, we have the Cracker Sport Road wetlands. So I believe there's 2 or 3 species that are either, I'll have to look it up, but statewide significant species are in that area. And then they also identify supporting landscapes, so landscapes that support that habitat. So we have some areas that support the Fullerton Forest, which is in, I guess that's Whitehall. So those are more things that can be added to this prioritization. And then the last slide, we have our current preserved open space. And this is just the categories that came off of the official map. And again, one of the things that I think we're going to be doing through this process of the comp plan update is having a definition of what open space is, because it means a lot of different things to different people. So having that clarified as to what open space is, protected open space, so that we can all talk about the same thing and know what each other are talking about. So that gives an idea of all these GIS layers that we have available to identify areas worth protecting, and we can prioritize areas based on analysis and inputs from the different boards in the community. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of put in front of everybody, so that when we get to the speakers tonight, they can talk about some of the tools, partners, and things and examples of how they preserved their property or their lands that were worth protecting.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions from the board?
Yep.
Are those statistics and maps available on the comp plan portal or?
Not yet.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so when we'll probably put this presentation up as part of the workshop. So on the calendar invite or the calendar entry on the website, we'll add presentations. So they'll be available through that. And then we'll probably also make them available through the comp plan page.
Any other questions from the board?
I don't have any other questions, but for yourself and the rest of the board, Randy is aware of this. I need to leave around 7:15, so I'll find a convenient break point.
Very
Okay.
good, thank you.
I just don't want to be rude. Thank you.
Hey, Dave, real quick, I did notice the newly acquired tract off of 22 in Springhouse is not highlighted on here, so before we post that.
Yeah,
we'll
so
get that up
again,
for you.
this is all the data that I compiled off of the official map.
Gotcha.
So I use those layers. I haven't had a chance to go in and update
Yeah.
a whole lot, but some of it's updated.
Just at first glance, that one.
Yes.
And Kohler Ridge would
Yep.
be the other.
Yep.
Cool.
Very good, thank you. Well, thank you for doing the staff presentation, Dave, appreciate it. So on to our first presenter, Donna Wright from Lehigh County. You can, whoever's more comfortable. Well, welcome, Donna. Thank you for joining us this evening.
There it is. Now it's on. Now I'm official. Good evening, everyone. I'm here, Donna Wright, Farmland Conservation Specialist from the Lehigh County Farmland Preservation Office. I'm also a sitting supervisor chair for Lower Milford Township in Lehigh County. So I'm here to answer any questions that you guys might have concerning farmland preservation in our county. You guys have one farm which has been split into two that was preserved quite a few years ago in South Whitehall. That is the only farmland that is officially preserved in your township at the moment. One of the things we've been doing is been highly successful in working with municipalities and helping to support preservation in the other municipalities. Our cap that we have that our board has set is $6,000 an acre. And needless to say, a lot more, depending on your municipality, your acres can go for a lot more than that when it is appraised. When we're looking at a piece of property that a landowner has applied and we feel that we have the funding available in order to preserve their farm, what we have is an appraiser come out. And the appraiser will compare 4 farms that are preserved of a similar size and 4 farms that are not preserved that have recently sold for development. The difference in the price per acre between the non-developed farm or the preserved farms and the developed farms, that is what we consider our offer. It can range anywhere. We've had farms that years ago went for $600 an acre. Our most expensive farm that we had appraised was in South Upper Saucon. It was appraised for the farmland preservation value at $24,000 per acre. Now we have a cap of $6,000. That's as much as the county and state will pay. However, Upper Saucon pitched in another $9,000 per acre. It didn't bring the farm up to their total appraised value, but it got them about $16,000, $17,000 per acre. The rest, the difference between the $24,000 it was appraised at and what they were actually paid, the landowner then went to the IRS and got a tax break because they did a donation. It's what's considered a donation because they didn't get the full value. So there is that option for a lot of landowners. We also just figured out another new way thanks to Berks County. We have a landowner currently in Weisenberg and Low Hill, borders both communities. We are preserving or paying for 93 acres of his property, which is the prime soils and prime agricultural land, but his actual farm is 141 acres. The rest of it is in woodlands or in steep slopes, so he has soils that don't rank, or he has wildland or his wetlands. We're actually preserving the entire 141 acres, but we're only paying for 93 of it. And again, that owner is going to take the donated areas and he's going to get a tax write-off on that as a donation. So there's many ways that we can help landowners make up a difference. We also have noticed that farms that are running from 10 acres is our smallest. It has to be at least 10 acres of agriculturally active land. So that's an open field. All right, that's our minimum size, and it goes up from there. If farms that are running between 10 acres and up to about 25, 30 acres are hot tamales in the Lehigh Valley. They are selling fast. They are selling at pretty much development rate, even if they are preserved. So that's been pretty interesting. Which school district are you guys? Are you guys Parkland? Okay, Parkland has just contacted our office within the last couple of weeks. Lehigh County the state passed this a few years back, and Lehigh County has approved it. If you have the 3 taxing bodies, you have the county, the school district, and the municipality all agree, and there's an ordinance that is passed. The preserved farms land, not the buildings, but the land, can be frozen at the tax rate that they are paying when they preserve the farm. So Southern Lehigh School District does this, East Penn does this, Northeastern School District all does this, and Lehigh County has approved that. They review it every 10 years. Probably about 5 more years now on this last approval. It's a big plus. When they did, God, how long ago was it now? 15 years ago when the county did the reassessment that needed to be done, that hadn't been done for years. We ended up with, and I'm Lower Milford Township, so I can speak to my folks who are from there. We have the first farm that was ever preserved in Lehigh County in Lower Milford Township. It's across the street from me, actually. And their total school taxes that they pay from 48 acres is about $450 to Southern Lehigh School District because of the tax breaks. So it can be, I mean, they're an extreme example because they were the first farm, but it is a tax break for people who are out there. And Parkland has expressed interest in maybe signing up for it. So this is huge. I know Upper Mac is also looking at getting pretty active on their preservation, and they're pretty excited that Parkland was expressing some interest. So that's going to be one of our big projects for this year, talking to them. We do know it makes a huge difference. It's a lot cheaper to keep a property open space, whether it's farmland or whether it's woodlands or whether it's wetlands, it really doesn't matter. Open space is a whole lot less expensive on infrastructure to maintain than it is when it's a house or a commercial building on it. As you guys know, police and it's fire and it's roads and it's everything else. And God knows we're not getting enough in for our roads maintenance these days from the state. You guys have specific question to ask me, because as some of you here know, I could go on for hours and that's not usually helpful. So what in particular are you looking for? We do not have at this point any South Whitehall applicants, and we rely on the owners to come to us. We can give out information, and we ask for any kind of, knock on doors and say, hey, would you be interested? But a lot of it is by word of mouth. So it's how much money is out there. Are people going to get a fair rate? But we are really finding, like I said, the smaller properties are selling like hotcakes. We had a 24-acre farm just up here in Heidelberg. It went up on the market and they had 63 buyers interested. They had to go an ad hoc auction, and it went for really prime property. And it's a preserve farm. So anything, questions, please?
I'm a fairly new commissioner, 3 months. I didn't realize Parkland was doing that. I was on the school board for 23 years there.
They literally
That's
just.
right, 'cause I left. Two things. Well, one thing you brought up that I was not aware of, I didn't know you could do it for the land, is the IRS donation, which I think is a big factor.
It's a huge thing.
That's the first I've heard of that. I know
It's been true for 20 years. It's just that people don't realize it.
Oh, well, yeah, I know, because you couldn't do it years ago with a house, because I found that out with, I went to IRS for a ruling on a house, but that was a different story.
And actually, as a farmer, if you have an active farmer with a farm that is preserved, they can actually spread out their tax rebate, or however you wish to say it, their tax credit over 15 years, right, actually, if they're alive. So
what would be the first step?
The first step is having a landowner that's interested in looking into the preservation process. It's having them know that there's a possibility out there that they could get a fair exchange per acre for their land. Some people don't care about that. They actually just want to make sure that their family farm, or they like the open space, they like what it looks like, and they want to preserve it. From there, it comes into our office, and I personally get to look at the computer program and rank its soils and how close it is to water and sewage and road frontage and all those kind of things, which are all figured out on a program. So I'm not making the numbers up. It's even across the board. We go by the state soils and all that kind of thing. What the ranking comes in, 100 is an absolute perfect farm. I think the highest ranked farm we've had in Lehigh County that I personally know of came in at number 81, and that was in Lower Macungie, because it had these class 1 soils, which are fantastic. But we have, by state law, start at the highest ranking farm that we have for that year and go down from there. So it's how much money do we have to spend. But we do have a very interesting program that we came up in the last 3 years or 4 years since I started, which is called the Municipal Partnership. And so North Whitehall is doing it this year, as a matter of fact. They have a farm that has been on our waiting list for 20 years. It literally was down at the bottom of the list. Schmidt Farm. It's 48. It was surveyed. It's 50 acres. It's a beautiful little farm. It's been farmed. It's functioning. It's been in the family for 150 years. They didn't want to see it developed. And the municipality can come in and pay for the appraisal. We use our appraiser. Our appraiser has a flat fee of $1,700. So the township pays $1,700, finds out what the property is worth, so they can figure out if they want to buy it or not, or help for the preservation. The township comes up with 2/3 of the price of the preservation, and the county pays for the other third. We pay up to a max of, because our cap is 6,000, we pay up to a max of 2,000 an acre. The township can pay the other 4,000, or they could pay more than that if it comes in higher than that. That's a negotiation between the township and the owner. And you can preserve it out of order then. So they're preserving, they're next to the last farm, but what's happened now, even just the neighbors finding out that Bob Schmidt is preserving his farm and is going to get $5,800 plus per acre for it, all of a sudden we're starting to get calls. I understand Bob's preserving. What do I need to do? What's the story? Is there money out there? Is there interest? And so that ends up spurring some of the neighbors and some of the other farm owners and landowners to come in.
You mentioned that South Whitehall has no applicants at the present time.
Correct.
I guess it's a double-edged sword. If they don't come to you,
Yeah,
right?
we can't help them.
Well, right. But what's to say we can't go to them
Nothing.
and said, you know what? Look, here's what we want to do in South Whitehall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was out knocking on doors,
Mhm.
okay, I've got to tell you, a handful of people, I mean, obviously not everybody has land they can preserve,
Yeah.
but said, I don't ever want to see my farm developed, ever.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, what are we going to do about it? Got to get elected first, which
Right.
was fine. But now that that's happened, it's almost like, what's to say I shouldn't go knock on their door and say, you know what?
Absolutely.
Hey, I
Mhm.
thank you for your support,
Mhm.
but now let's move to the next level.
Right, and there's no harm whatsoever if you have people who, and we do this across the county, if you have a landowner that's interested, they can call us up, we'll meet with them, we can talk to them, we can go over the program. What's interesting is that with our program, and this is state law again, every farm that is preserved is still entitled to one additional home. Even if there's already, a house down there and a mother-in-law's house, which some of these old farms have, you're still entitled to one additional home. And you can either, it's a maximum of 2 acres that can be subdivided off for either the new home, or you can subdivide the maximum of 2 acres off for the original home. This is a new thing that just happened in the last couple of years because there's been so many Amish and Mennonite families in Lancaster and York who said, we don't want to keep the old house. We want to have a new house. And so the legislation changed so that they could either subdivide off one or the other. Both properties, even the small house, still remains 100% farmland preservation with the deed attached. We go in and inspect the farms every other year. That's the other thing. Even if you guys preserve something, but it's under our program, we're doing the inspection, we're doing the administration, we're doing the agreement of sales, we're doing the deed work. You guys don't have to do that. That's all on us. And Whitehall liked that because they were doing their own preservation, and they were
So
like,
this program is basically purchasing development rights,
correct.
not purchasing the land and turning it over to the
Correct.
township.
This is all we're doing is development rights. It is still
Property.
owned by the landowner. It can be inherited by their kids. It can be sold, but when it is sold, when it is inherited, when the deed changes, 100% of the farmland preservation deed of easement language is attached to that deed. It is a permanent thing. It cannot be sold. State law, it's permanent. Unlike Act 515 or 319, where they can, if you've got somebody deep enough pockets, they can pay off the 7 years worth of back taxes.
One of the things I just would like to add is last year we had a potential farm for preservation. We worked with the landowner, we provided information, we met with Donna, and the farm was ranked number 1. But it wasn't the right time for the landowner, and there were other issues that prevented it from happening. But if you know of anybody that's interested, send them our way and we'll work with them to get them the information they need. So, it's the kind of stuff we wait for. As soon as we hear that somebody's interested, we're like guns a-blazing, ready to go.
Well, I mean, I just, last month I did the same kind of conversation for Upper Macungie. And one of their open space board members happens to be the owner for Clover Leaf Winery. And he called me up the next day and went, I should have done this like years ago. And he's got 5 farms and, okay, I have to join ag security area, no problem. Where's my forms, where everything else? So I'm really excited. John's going to be coming in, and maybe should we get to preserve more farmland? It is a matter of education. It's a matter of getting the word out there that the municipality supports it, that there is money out there. If we don't have enough money to cover their acres, there's tax benefits. You're welcome. Anything else? And it is in the municipal planning code. We are, as a municipalities in state of Pennsylvania, we are supposed to be protecting our wetlands, our steep slopes, our woodlands, and our agricultural land. So when it comes to zoning, I mean, Lower Milford's in the books 4 times for protecting that and winning all the way up to the state courts. And we had to do that. We're still in a fight with a quarry application. We won't go into the graphic details. It's been 21 years, but we've won those court cases because it is municipal planning law that those things should be protected. So even when you're not talking to me, if you're talking to somebody else about the wetlands, steep slopes, woodlands, you guys have the right to zone that as being protected. So just as a township supervisor, I put my hat on. Is there anything else you guys want to know? Because there's so much information out there. It is just, if you've got somebody who's interested, send them our way. We'll talk to them.
Just a follow up to the comment you just made about the township zoning for protection. We are going through our comprehensive plan right now. And do you have any tips for us as we are preparing our official map?
Official map is huge. That's fantastic. Put down on there what you want to have preserved. It gives you guys as a municipality a year to come up with an option if that piece of property becomes available, whether that's you guys buying it, whether you're finding another option for use, whatever it is. It gives you a stale time, which is fantastic, as Dave can tell you for sure. The other thing is really you can zone to protect those things. Do the setbacks from your waterways, protect how much of the woodlands can be disturbed or steep slopes can be disturbed. And I mean, we've been doing really tough ordinances in Lower Milford since 1969. We actually had Bucks County, Buckingham, and Plumsteadville and Hilltown. A bunch of those folks contacted us on what our zoning looks like. Go around and look at some of the highly successful communities and see what they're doing. And you don't have to rewrite the book or use a wheel that's already there. And the Brandywine Conservancy helped us with our zoning. They had some very good ideas in there. They had some not so good ideas in there. But, so some things will work, some things won't. But you guys can really do a lot through zoning. And you will always have somebody who comes in and yells, I have the right to develop and I'm going to take you to court, which we did. And what was very interesting is about 5 years later, his son came in and preserved all 150 acres in Lower Milford Township because they decided they wanted it preserved and not built. So it really kind of runs the gamut. And I know you guys are in a tough spot because you really have a lot of your open space is owned by one family, which makes it difficult. I'm going to put the white elephant out there. But you also have some other really nice pieces that are out there. And it doesn't all have to be agricultural land. It can be wetlands and it can be woodlands, and open space is fabulous. It does not cost you as much money.
Any other questions from the board? Nothing? Well, thank you, Donna.
No problem.
Moving on, we will ask John Mauser from Lower Mount Bethel Township. Good evening. Thank you again for joining us.
Diane, it's my pleasure to be here, okay? Randy, if you want to start that. Now, I want to hop on what was just mentioned. I would advertise in my township newsletter about preserving your farm. I would put it on the website. I would have a special workshop where you notify all the residents through your township newsletter that you're going to do farmland preservation. You're going to talk about open space. You're going to talk about the future of the community. And that worked in Lower Mount Bethel Township. Okay? Get it in the newsletter. Get it on the website. Have a meeting. We had Maria Benzoni from Farmland Preservation come in and talk to the public. You're not going to get everyone, but you open the door and you never know what's going to happen. It could be next year, 5 years, 10 years. Some of the properties we preserved took 10 years, I'm embarrassed to say, but we got them. And that's the part that counts. Okay, if you can hit the PowerPoint program, I prefer not to see all the slides on the side there. On ADHD, so you can't have extra stuff on the side. I'm familiar with PowerPoint?
I am, but
Right here.
hit the slideshow button. This one here?
Let them play with it.
Same one I hit at
The
bottom.
blinders, okay.
Right-hand side.
We'll hold a piece of paper.
There we go.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I taught 8th grade for 35 years. I'm kind of antsy. The superintendent, the principal would give me all the kids that were ADHD because I thought they were normal. Okay, so just be aware of that fact. When people mention Lower Mount Bethel Township, I don't have to stand in front of the microphone, do I?
Loud enough anyway.
Well, I'm loud. Okay, I will stand here in front of the microphone. When you look at Lower Mount Bethel Township, this is all people see. Beautiful farmland. We have preserved 4,000 acres. Okay, hit the next slide, Cousin Randy. Okay, our township is 25 square miles. That's about 15,000 acres. So we're a little bigger than you. Our population is 3,100. Believe it or not, our population has been going down. We have 1,800 homes thereabouts. You have a few more. Being sarcastic, Mike, okay? We do have 4,000 acres of preserved farmland, but every community is facing challenges. We have the PPL plant, which is now Talon. We have 3 quarries, quarry trucks, 80 to 100 for each quarry. We have 3 quarries running through the township. It's tough, okay? So each township has their own little problems. You can hit the next slide. Okay, our township is located on the eastern edge of Northampton County, okay? We're a rural town. No, that's all right. That's all right. You're telling me, you're giving me the hook. Okay. Our township is located in the Martin Jacoby watershed. And the crucial factor that I need you to understand, that's steep slopes in the. That's unusual. Thank you. Okay. Those steep slopes are problematic for us. In our township, we have road collapses like you wouldn't believe. The banks are about 100 to 200 feet high with a slope that goes, whew. We have to spend millions of dollars repairing township roads. So we have a financial burden. So we have to find money anywhere we can find it. We do use dirt, gravel, and low volume road funds. Okay, that's a godsend. Next slide. Properties come up for sale. This particular property here is 4 lots. And believe it or not, 2 of them are in Washington Township, 2 are in Lower Mount Bethel. I approached Washington Township. I said, let's buy these, okay? Let's buy these. We're designed as high-end lots. He was selling them for $600,000 a piece. This was when the New Jersey influx was coming in. Okay, they're around a little less than 20 acres a piece. EAC, myself, I went to the landowner, who happened to be a real estate agent from the west end of Allentown, but we won't mention his name, okay. I went to him 12 years ago. I said, look, we would really like to acquire those lots because it has Martin's Creek, has steep slopes, and lot 4 is actually a floodplain. And that was pre-approved a long time ago. So it looked like a tough sell. Well, you know what? We were able to make a deal, and I'll tell you how we made the deal. I want to look at some pictures first, and then we're going to get to the nuts and bolts. You okay, Randy? You can give me the hook on. We're good? Okay, we acquired the property. We acquired the 74 acres, 8/10 of a mile of stream, okay? And we bought the 2 lots that were in Washington Township. They didn't have an EIT tax. They were having financial issues. Our township bought the 2 lots outside of the township to help preserve what we have. Okay, hit the next one. We put in, there was a road going in, a Macadam Road. We just put some trails in. The green is the boundary lines. The red is an upland trail. Hit the next slide. Thank you, Randy. And we just have grassy trails. Maintenance crew goes out there. They cut it, no expense. We're not spending any money, okay? That 74-acre parcel became one of our most popular parks. Hit the next slide. It has a gate. That's for the estate when the 4 homes are going to go in there, with the high-end homes. We keep that open 24/7, 365. That's just an old picture. Go ahead. We have a nice little parking area we put in. We got grants for all that stuff through the county and through the state. So we weren't paying a lot. Usually we try and match 50-50. That gives you a good, good number of points in the grant rounds. Hit the next slide. We put up signs. Unfortunately, that map there, this is really on the cheap. I'm embarrassed. We put it in the printer and I laminated it. But it works until we get everything set. So you don't have to spend a lot of money up front. Hit the next slide. We have a gate to stop the people from driving back the road. It's a passive park. Passive parks are nice. Why? People love to bird walk their dogs, fish, or hunt. Hit the next slide. We do permit deer hunting and turkey with archery. Okay? We have a lot of turkeys, a lot of deer. Not implying the turkeys are residents in our community, okay? Got that? Next slide. As always, all of us have problems. We have an issue with Norfolk Southern. We have a beautiful access road, but that's Norfolk Southern Railroad. I can only have the road crew use that. I can't have I was going to put a parking lot on the inside, just an acre or less actually. And Norfolk Southern says I can't use it except for access for maintenance. But we'll get around that eventually. Once again, for that property, we're going to talk about it in a moment. We use state funds, we use county funds, and we used our EIT tax. That earned income tax is your biggest tool that you can get. Do you guys have an earned income tax? Okay, it's 0.25%. You get 1% as earned income for Township's general fund. The 1/4% adds up over a period of time, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Hit the next slide, Randy. Well, we got everything. We have our stream, we have our gate, we have our area. We were happy. We were happy. Thanks to the state, thanks to the county, and thanks to that EIT tax. Okay, and then once you get your park using grants, you play the game. You have to be a politician. I'm actually a shy person, but I realize I know that's sad, but you have to overcome your shyness if you want to play the game and get what your people need in the community, okay? So every time we have a park, we have an opening. We invite all the dignitaries. Ryan Cope, Randy's brother. Now, Randy claims he's handsomer than his brother. I don't know. Moving right along here, we had Rob Knights. Okay, you really moved along. That's fine, Randy. We'll stay right there. Okay. Okay, so you have to get used to getting out there in front of the public in front of the dignitaries, get your face out there, get your township, tell them what you're proud of. We're proud of this park. We had Becky Bradley from Lehigh Valley Planning Commission come out. This is Rob Knights from Jacobsburg, DCNR. He's with Lehigh Valley Greenways. Lehigh Valley Greenways is a good way for you guys to get grant funding, okay? Our township uses them all the time, Lehigh Valley Greenways. And the good thing to do is send one of your supervisors or your township manager to the meetings. And Randy, you're going, correct? Did you put a grant application in this round? Oh, for DCNR. Well, you can do LVG also, okay? So decide what you want. Here's Lauren Possinger. The one year I gave him an award at a Delaware River Sojourn event, you know, for all his work in conservation. Now, of course, he manages grants. I'm not saying that's devious, but we said it was thanking you, okay? Do I sound like a car sale? I hope you're not a car salesman. Oh, no. Oh, okay.
Yes, I am.
It's been said I never take my foot out of my mouth, okay? And you have your ribbon cutting, okay? You get people out there. And the big thing is you have to take the players out before you purchase the property. Get them, I'll back up. Get them on tours, okay? DCNR wants to see what you're doing before you submit the application, okay? These people are your friends. Hit the next slide. We better hurry up here. It was wet, and they still wanted to go for a hike on grassy trails. Hit the next one. And here's the stream project we did. We had the Fish Commission come in, design the project for free, no engineering fees. Whoa, that's nice. Okay, we got a local quarry. I said we have 3 quarries. Well, we go to them. Hey, H&K, I'm not supposed to say Haynes and Kibblehouse, okay? That's not right. We went to the quarry. We said, hey, we need like 160 tons of R6 and R7 stone. Well, they gave it to us and they provided the trucking. And the trucking's probably just as expensive as the stone, by the way, for R6 and R7, because you don't want to get your truck damaged. Okay, so we play the game. Hit the next slide. You have power plants. We had PPL, which sold to Talon. Talon's a private equity firm. You know what that means? They want to make money for the shareholders. And the share, okay? So Talon came to the township and said, look, we're going to get rid of the Teckening Trails. 179 acres with 1.8 miles of river frontage. Now, luckily they came to the township. We had a good partnership with them. They said, hey, we'll give you the right of first refusal. This is where you need your partners. We went to DCNR, we went to the county. We said, look, we have a chance to get 179 acres of land alongside the Delaware River. And the partners came through, and we'll look at that in a moment. Hit the next slide. Here's that parcel. It's a string bean, but it's right along the Delaware River. Hit the next slide. Remember I said we have quarries? My greatest fear was this quarry was going to expand to get as close as the river as they could, okay? There's no guarantees what the closeness ratio is. We're dealing with karst geology here with glacial till on top. They're selling sand, gravel, and cobble, okay? Well, and that's not enough to save it. You'll have to excuse me as a dyed-in-the-wool conservationist. Well, anyway, we went to our partners. We got it. We bought it in 2018, and it was only because of that earned income tax, that silly 0.25%. Hit the next slide. Now, this is what you're going to be interested in. I show my residents all the other pictures. Then if I have a conservative who's going nuts on the board, I say, well, let's look at the numbers. What does an earned income tax mean to this township? And you have to remember, we have 3,100 people living in our township. We passed our ordinance in 2011. The earned income tax was approved in 2009. We started to collect it in 2009. In 2011, you have to develop an ordinance telling how this stuff is going to be used, okay? So everyone knows. Well, in 2011, we passed the ordinance. EIT is 1/4%. Now, in our township in 2010, we brought in $150,000. You just take your earned income tax that you're collecting right now, that 1%, divide it by 4. That's how much you can bring in every year to put towards open space. When I say open space, I'm talking farmland preservation. I'm talking steep slopes, woodlands, streams, everything. Okay? Now, this year, we jumped up to 199,000. And hey, Jason, what are you guys pulling each year with that 1/4%? Do you know offhand? I'm thinking of moving to Bushkill Township, okay? Okay. Now, you guys can crunch the numbers. Now, you have to pitch the EIT. Our township, when you voted on it, when we voted on it, 70% of the residents voted for it. As supervisors, we had our EAC out, we had volunteers out talking to people. You're not going to convince everyone. I had one gentleman come up to me day of the election. What do you want more open space for? We have all these quarries. We have like 600 acres of quarries, okay? Holes in the ground. So you're gonna face that, okay? Now, we spent $949,000 on open space conservation and recreation purchases. We'll look at that in a moment. We gave Northampton County $600,000 to preserve farms. And we're going to use some of our own money to preserve farms. Now, we have to go out, we have to knock on doors, we have to invite in Northampton County, similar person is Maria Bizzoni. She'll come to the township, she'll do programs. We put it in the township newsletter. We put it on the website. We hope to get 4 to 8 people thinking about it. And sometimes, as she mentioned, you don't get them the first year or the second year, okay? That Township Trail property, I was trying to get that for 12 years too. I guess I'm just not doing things right, okay? But if you're persistent, hey, things change. Now, let's look at the funding here. And this is how you play your game. Your possible funders are Pennsylvania DCNR, Northampton County, with you would be Lehigh County. And then you have your taxpayer money, that EIT tax, that 1/4%. Right now, after spending almost $1.5 million, we have well over 800,000 left. And I have a lot of properties in mind. And most of them are in creeks, streets, steep slopes. You use farmland preservation for the flat land that's being farmed, then you use your open space, the other open space money to grab the streams. And another reason you want to grab streams and lowlands, you know, as a township, if somebody's developing in a floodplain and you guys don't stop it, you're putting your FEMA insurance at risk, okay? You have to protect those wetland areas and flooding, okay? So when you do or update your official map, you might want to consider, are you going to show them your official map then, right? You got to look at Bushkills, okay? Look at his. That's going to be the model for my township. I'm proud that Jason came to my township several times, gave talks. We're following his lead. And we all learn from one another, okay? So anyway, to buy the one lot, which originally he was asking $600,000 for, lot 4, the final price was $147,000. I got $30,000 from the county. We used our EIT for $117,000. Randy's has saved this program to his computer, and you guys can do whatever you want with it, except throw darts. That's why my picture, my picture isn't there, forget it. Okay, moving right along here, that Teckening Trails property, 179 acres. The state kicked in 450. The county kicked in 200. The appraisal came in at 900,000.
No, it's a workshop. It's a workshop for open space. Yeah,
Okay.
have a seat.
You're gonna have to get appraisals. Our appraisal came in at 900,000. The owner's appraisal, which was Talon, came in at 125,000. Second class township, are you guys second class?
First.
First, well, the second class township code for us says we can take the average of the two appraisals and that could be the maximum price we pay. And Talon accepted it. So we paid $1,075,000 for that land. The cost to the taxpayers, and this is the neat thing, look at this. The taxpayers got that for $425,000. You have to leverage all the, am I not supposed to touch the screen too? Okay, you just have to tell me.
We have cleaners for it.
Okay, okay. Monahan's lots 1, 2, and 3 from the beginning of the program. The state kicked in 210. Now, the neat thing when you talk with the county, look at this crazy amount. In Northampton County, you're allotted so much money, each township, each borough. This is what was left over in our one account that they had set up. So we said, okay, we'll take it all. And they were happy to throw that in. That's why it's $30,512.52. The appraisal came in at 648. The owner, he just wanted to sell it at that point. He was pushing it for 15 years. Okay, I think you're familiar with the property right along. Okay. Okay. Well, that costs our township $407,000. Now here's the neat thing. Those 3 sets of purchases, total price that was paid was $1,870,000. Our EIT fund only kicked in a little over half. Okay? So I would strongly recommend you use the EIT. I would strongly recommend you develop your official map right after, or update your official map. Your comprehensive plan has to be updated first. So that's the first step. You're well on your way. And I need you to look at his official map. I'm going to pass the ball to you, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Jason. Yes, we have Jason Smith from Bushkill Township. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Definitely very exciting what you guys are doing. It's pretty amazing to see what other municipalities are doing some 20 years or so after we started doing this stuff in Bushkill. We didn't have as many good examples to go by and we were breaking a lot of trail. So sometimes I see things that are being done now and I think, boy, I wish we were doing that too. But I guess, we're happy with where we're at. So that's the story I kind of want to share with you guys tonight. I think it's amazing that you have this great GIS information and the mapping that you have. Really like the mapping. One of the things I stress, and it doesn't always work out with people, but one of the things that I always stress with people is that I think it's a good idea to not call out all of the parcels that you are looking to preserve on mapping, because that can get certain landowners agitated and it can certainly sabotage an otherwise good intention and a good program. So having maps that show your resource values, that support the reasons that you might protect certain parcels is very key. And I think that you have certainly done that with the mapping I saw tonight. That was fantastic. Before I get started, a couple of things I wanted to build on from John's presentation. One of the big reasons to have your EIT, aside from everything that John mentioned, was it gives you the ability to borrow money to preserve land. You don't always have enough in the kitty, especially I'm sure your property values out here are through the roof. You sometimes are going to need to borrow money in order to make the closing. And having a guaranteed source of income to your township is an easy mark for any lender. You can get a low interest loan and it's almost like free money. So it gives you that borrowing power that you otherwise just don't have. And I hear, you're talking about the official map. I think it's wonderful you have one. And if you can update yours to include some of the components that we did, I think that'd be beneficial to you. But you need a way to preserve what you put on your official map or protect what's on your official map. And if those things are environmental resources, open space, farmland, whatever you end up putting on there, you need a source of income to be able to protect and preserve those areas. So this open space fund and an EIT gives you that. Without it, you're kind of dead in the water. All you have is an empty threat of a year's worth of holding a project up. So I think it's very important to have. And another thing is, why protect natural areas? I've heard that over the years so many times, and I've heard, the old sayings of, purchase the best and zone the rest. But the fact is, zoning is not perfect protection on resources either. Conservation easements that you have crafted certainly provide a better protection than your regulations will. For instance, you may have no way under zoning or other township regulations to keep an area from being impacted by things like land clearing and certain land uses that owners have the right to do. Whereas your conservation easement may be very prescriptive that says how the land is to be managed and to be maintained as a healthy natural area. For instance, maybe only allowing people to cut dead and down and dangerous trees versus going out and cutting your mature trees, your live trees that are otherwise healthy and contribute to the character of the property and the value of the property. So I really feel like that's a great reason to have a preservation program, an open space program that allows you to do that. You certainly want to protect those values. That's the whole point of this program. That's what makes these natural areas beneficial to your community. So and then I guess on top of that is you probably won't pay top dollar for those lands either. You're not going to pay those exorbitant prices per acre for areas that are steep slopes, wetlands, floodplains. The appraisal values on them are going to be comparatively very low. But landowners generally are okay with that because they realize they can't develop them. The highest and best use is pretty low, so they'll take what they can get. So then you get to put a conservation easement on it that keeps it nice perpetually. So it's really a win-win. And then, hey, you have the choice to say no. You don't have to preserve everything, and you can focus your money on the lands that you think are the most important to preserve. So that could be farmland. Having the open space fund allows you all this freedom that you otherwise just don't have. And one of the things that I thought was really cool, one of our meetings, our solicitor said, is a very seasoned, long-time solicitor here in the Valley. He said, I've been coming to all these meetings for all these years, and this is the coolest thing that anyone does in any municipality, period, is this open space program. Because he said everything else is township business as usual. It's running a business. But this is something that actually gives back to the residents that they paid for, that they really wanted, gives back to them and makes their community better and protects their quality of life and their home values. Which I thought was pretty cool to hear come from our solicitor. So anyways, I'll get into my presentation a little bit. You can. Location of Bushkill Township, we all know this. We're in Northampton County. Next. We are in the Bushkill Creek watershed. Again. We have the Appalachian Trail off to our northern boundary, and we have Jacobsburg State Park, which actually sits right in the middle of Bushkill Township. Hit it again. There's Bushkill Township. We have 25 square miles. All our streams are high quality, except for Sober's Run, which actually we had redesignated as exceptional value, and we have a little tiny piece of Shennick that's not so good, but that's because of land use impacts from the past. And then we also have some of the Monocacy Creek in the lower left southwestern corner there that's green. But all of them are high quality or exceptional value and are listed as wild trout reproduction. So we have fantastic waterways that we really want to protect. And as you can see where Jacobsburg is in our township, it's very important to us as a resource to protect. And we don't want it to become a biological island out in the middle of development. We need to keep it connected to those wild lands along the Blue Mountain Ridge and the game lands that are to the north of us. A shot of Jacobsburg. It's one of the 4 environmental education centers in the Commonwealth, and it's a state park, and it gets used very heavily. You can see all the trails, and it takes a lot of heat, and it's only going to get worse as population in the valley continues to to grow and in our region. We recognize that, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing things to promote and grow the ability for people to use outdoor recreation within our community. We have some fantastic resources. These are all shots of streams and some of the farm fields and fields in our township. We also have natural reproducing brook trout streams. All of our headwater streams have been found to have natural reproducing brook trout, which is fantastic. Everywhere to the south of us is full of brown trout, which are not native. They're great to catch, but they're not native. Here's a shot lower down the Bushkill. You can see the fishing pressure that the Bushkill Creek gets. We also have vernal ponds, a lot of wetlands. We have a lot of listed species, rare and listed species. So it's a lot of great resources to protect. We have the bog turtle, which is federally listed for protection. And we have fantastic historic resources. This is Jacobsburg Historical Society, and you can see some of the buildings there and the farmland. Next. This is the gun factory at Jacobsburg, which is still kind of the center for Jacobsburg at this point for the historical district. The gun factory is no longer with us, unfortunately, but all these resources are around us, and we're trying to protect them with our township government and our ability to do that. It was Henry, Henry family. So the challenges that we saw around 2000 before we had an open space program. We had very high development pressure, aging farmers, small farms with poor soils. The economy was development based at the time. That was our growth model. We had the 9/11 effect with people moving out of the city. We had the Route 33 connection down to Interstate 78, which was a direct conduit into New York City and North Jersey. Our good land was dwindling, and there was a move towards developing sensitive lands as a result. And the tax increases that we were seeing were just continuing to drive development with the way that we were set up. Basically, we realized we had insufficient regulations and not very good protection plans. And this is the type of development that we were seeing one after another in the region. And here's some of the impacts that we see from that development. So 3 of those pictures are from land development. That's the Bushkill Creek down in the wild trout, Class A wild trout section. Which, as you can imagine, that's not good for any trout. And then the lower right picture is from farmland. And it's unfortunate, but that's what happens on farms when we get heavy rains, just the way it goes. But all these things impact our streams. This is in Jacobsburg State Park, and you can see the impacts to the stream and to some of these trees. Those trees are probably about 200 to 300 years old, and they're really only about 12 to 18 inches in diameter, very slow growing down there. We hate to lose them. And then we see the flooding impacts down in Easton from all this poor land development. So we determined it was time to act. We developed a strategy. That was the first thing, was to protect primary environmental attributes, our high quality exceptional value streams, headwater wetlands, vernal ponds, Appalachian Trail, Jacobsburg. We recognized that we had a beautiful natural landscape, rolling hills and view sheds, and we had this great combination of woodlands and farmlands in Bushkill Township. Our farms are smaller, but they're quite nice and picturesque. So next. So the common thread that we saw there was our riparian woodlands in our township were really the thing that I think everyone seemed to really like about the township. As you drive around, you go from farm field into the woodlands, farm fields into the woodlands, and back and forth and across the stream valleys. And it's just a nice landscape. And the values that those riparian woodlands gave us were water quality, wildlife habitat, aesthetics, and recreation. So we really wanted to protect these features. So we looked at our protection options at that time, which is some of the things that you guys have been talking about, the ordinance improvements that you can make for environmental resource protection, multi-municipal planning, which we've been engaged in for probably about 15 plus years with 9 other municipalities around us. And we've had very good success with that. And hopefully you're familiar with that and what it does for you, but it would allow you to concentrate growth instead of having to provide all different types of growth here in your township. You can actually distribute that amongst all of the municipalities that are in your multi-municipal plan so that you can make sure that the growth is happening where it should be regionally, not necessarily all within your township. So it's a very powerful planning tool.
Do you have joint zoning?
We don't have joint zoning. We had an agreement with everyone, however, to implement that plan. So everyone had to sign on to implement the plan in order for it to actually work. So it's kind of a counter way around joint zoning. We also had the stream classification upgrade for Sober's Run, which was 10 square miles of our township, which is a good thing for us. And we had the official map with which John mentioned. We created an official map, and we were one of the first municipalities in the state to do so strictly, specifically for environmental protection. Official maps have been around since the time of Ben Franklin. Actually, Philadelphia had the first original official map way back when. But it was a planning tool that was very powerful, but not often used. And then we also talked about an open space program, and we've worked on all these things. So we reestablished our EAC in 2001. It was originally created in 1979 as one of the first EACs in the Commonwealth. I think there are a couple that were before us, but we were an early one. We conducted an environmental resource inventory to create the mapping and the database we needed to build on for our protection. We engaged in studies and restoration projects where we felt we could do that. We established our official map for riparian protection. We created our open space program and used the EIT fund, which you've heard about. And that is generally the way that municipalities are doing it here in the Commonwealth. There are some other options, but the EIT fund has a lot of advantages, and I think most people realize that and go that route. We engaged in the multi-municipal planning. We revised our ordinances, actually several times now over the years. I've been supervisor for about 18 years. We upgraded our water quality classification. We worked very diligently with new land development plans to try to tailor them to be the least impactful on our resources. And we used our ordinances and the official map and other things to do that. We created new trails and passive recreation areas for our residents so they could see what the value was of the EIT fund that they're paying for, what they're getting back. We have 4 really nice passive use preserves that have trails, that have ponds. We've engaged with the Hunter Access Program. I have there as a last bullet, working with the Game Commission to open some of these properties up for hunting that's controlled through our township. We have an open space coordinator now after many years of us doing it as supervisors. We now have a dedicated staff person to help with that. We, as John said, we provide this information as much as possible through the newsletter, our website, talking to people. People in our township are pretty well aware of what we're doing at this point and are extremely pleased with that. It's amazing how nice our meetings have become over all the years because people seem so much more pleased with what's going on in the township now than they were back in 2000 before we were doing all this. So, good thing. Partnerships, I won't go through all these, but as you can see, there's a long list of partners and they're huge. John mentioned all the partnerships that he's been working with to make things happen. A lot of these people have grant funding. If not, they're just going to be generally supportive of your project. And when you can get letters from 10, 12 different organizations supporting your project and your grant request, it makes it pretty easy for people to get on board. So our official map, as John mentioned, this is a picture of our official map. Never mind that it says sheet 1 of 2. Sheet 1 was the original cut that only had infrastructure things on it. Sheet 2 has everything on it. And, or I'm sorry, this sheet has everything on it. And what you're seeing there is the limey green, the bright green is the game lands along our northern border, our Township Rec Center, and Jacobsburg State Park. All of the other green, darker green, are riparian woodlands that we added to the map for protection going forward in our township. And you can see how green this makes Bushkill Township. The white is land that's not protected through the official map. That's, farms, residential areas, commercial areas, but it does not have protection on the map. What we did is we tied the protection idea for the riparian lands to water quality because it is those stream side areas, those riparian areas that protect the water quality of our streams. So if you can tie to water quality, you have a very good chance of winning the fight in court should that ever happen, if there's a challenge to what you're doing. So we didn't put all of our woodlands on. There are some woodland islands all throughout our township that were taken off of this map because we know they're not well tied to water quality. We really have a hard time justifying why we want them preserved. But as you can see, this really gives us good protection of our streams. And then basically what you're seeing here, if laser pointer works, it doesn't work on the screen, I guess, huh? All those corridors are our stream corridors. The 2 that go up to the north are Sober's Run, the exceptional value, and then the one that goes off to the west is Bushkill Creek and all of its little tributaries. But you can see this protects those riparian zones around all those streams and prevents people from developing those areas and clearing those areas and whatnot. Anything that requires a township permit has to come to the township, go through our Environmental Advisory Council, go through our Planning Commission, go through our Board of Supervisors if they want to impact those green areas. It's a negotiation tool. The official map, if you're not familiar with it, is a great planning tool, but it definitely takes an understanding on how to use it and how to use it effectively. I would encourage everyone to do it. We learned as we went, and it went fine. Worked very closely with our solicitor when things got a little sticky. And over the years, we've gotten quite good at this. And we work very well with landowners and developers that need permits at this point. We do allow some land development as part of this. This is just kind of an example. We take a parcel that has this big parcel in the middle, has a pond, and all the green areas are the mapped areas that we want protected. The white areas are more open to development. If someone needs to cross through a green area to get to a white area, we generally will look favorably upon that. We're not trying to stop everything. We're just trying to plan for the least amount of impact. And this map allows us to do that. It does give us the 1-year time frame to work with someone on how to make that happen. Worst case, if they don't want to do it, we can then purchase the property and we can make it happen that way. So it's kind of the hammer that we have behind what we want to get done. What we have found is that people generally are willing to work with us on these things. We're very easy to work with as long as people are working with us. And this is a stream that did not have any riparian area. This is part of one of the good things about our official map too. Not only did we protect the areas of woodlands that existed along our streams, we also are planning for restoration where the woodlands have been taken away, where they've been cut or lost them in the past. So we have a 100-foot buffer on each side of the stream that is also slated for preservation as part of future land development activities, so that hopefully we get these riparian areas back and healthy over the years. So our open space program, again, we needed it to support our official map. It's the mechanism that we have to purchase and designated greenway areas and protect those areas. The components to it would be the plan itself and the funding mechanism, which we've talked about quite a bit. Originally, we were bringing in $350,000. When I created this presentation, we were actually closer to $750,000, and now we're about at $800,000 a year that we're bringing in that we can use for preservation. We currently have a balance of about $2 million in that fund, which gives us a nice cushion, but it's amazing how fast the money goes when a big property comes up for preservation. So it's nice to have some in there. It's important to keep using it and preserving. That's what you're supposed to be doing. That's what your residents want. So we do that, but that's just kind of how it generally works out. We have borrowed, we've gone in the red, and we've had to pay back. And the cool thing is even when you've borrowed money, you still have the ability to preserve more properties because you do have money in your fund and you can keep borrowing if you need to. So you don't have to worry about missing out on opportunities. So the EIT fund and getting it in place, step one, our EAC recommended it to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, got that through the process. The board approved through a referendum on the ballot, or approved a referendum on the ballot, asking about the approval for the 0.25 earned income tax as a dedicated tax for open space. It cannot be used for anything else. It can never be used for roads. It can never be used for anything else. It's just open space. That's it. It's a separate account. It can now, of those properties. Correct. Thanks, Randy. Yes. Which that was a new thing from when we had started it. When we started it, you couldn't do that. And then people realized across the state, wow, we have all these acquisitions, all this property, and we have no money to take care of it and maintain it and develop it for passive uses, that are consistent with the reason you preserved it in the first place. So the state did pass another act that allows up to 25% to do that, which is how we actually do ours and how we fund part of the Open Space Coordinators program in order to do that. Step three, EAC conducted educational campaigns. We did our newsletter articles, newspaper articles. We had public meetings at the township. We just got the word out as much as possible. And then on election day, we actually all went to the polling locations and we handed out cards. You see one there that was asking people to support open space. And it approved at a ratio of about 2 to 1. which is pretty consistent. As John said, 70% really is where it's done well. That's usually what you get. And the other 30% of people don't want it. They don't necessarily know why. They just don't want to pay more taxes. But I think even in the end, you kind of win those people over because they see what a boon it is for the community and really what it does to protect their own property values and the quality of life where they're living. So our original open space plan was developed in 2007. We revised it 10 years later in 2017, which we had done ourselves. Originally, we worked with a consultant from Bucks County, did a wonderful job with the plan. A lot of those consultants aren't around at this point. Some of them may be around a little, but we don't have access to some of the ones that we originally used to work on all this. So that's why we're, I guess, out here doing these presentations and not them. It was about an 8-month process to develop the plan. We had 2 public input meetings so that the residents could say what they really liked, what they wanted. The result was a 2-faceted plan for us. About 50% of the people wanted farmland preservation, and the other 50% of the people wanted things that fit into the natural area preservation category. So we were about 50-50, which was kind of a nice split. And I kind of like to, if I'm working with community, if you have both of these resources, I like to make sure that we're kind of marketing it that way because you want to be able to use the money to preserve both things, not just farmland. You have farmland preservation programs, which this money can supplement, but we don't have a natural resource program. At least we didn't anyway back then. And we needed some mechanism to protect those areas. So the mechanisms that we use for protection, Bushkill, generally are conservation easements, which we prefer because we're just buying development rights essentially. But the conservation easement document, again, protects a lot of the great things about these properties that we want protected. So the easement is very important. But we also, a lot of times, have had to deal with fee simple purchases of the property. And the reason for that is because not all people want an easement. Some people, maybe they're older, they just want to sell their property and get out from under it, move on. And when that happens, we run the risk of losing the property to other interests, and it might be a property that we're very interested in. So we can purchase properties fee simple. I think it's important to stress that we can also divest ourselves of those properties that we purchase fee simple. Originally, we were supposed to, that there's been some freedom in that too over the years. We've kept some of these areas and used them as public preserves. So it's a very good thing for us, but you can purchase fee simple, and I think it will happen to anybody that has an open space program.
Purchase the farm.
Yeah, thanks, John. When you divest, you actually end up putting a conservation easement on the property. It doesn't have to be the entire property, but it should be as much as possible. Generally, what we do is if it's open land and there's no house on the property, we allow for a small building site as part of it. And the idea there is, for us so far, they've been farms that we purchased. So we would allow for basically a new farm by allowing someone to build a house and have an area for outbuildings like barns and other support agricultural buildings in, say, a 2-acre envelope. The rest of the property is protected under a conservation easement that we hold at the township. There's other potential easement holders as well, but always us. And the money from the proceeds from the reselling go back into the open space program. They, again, cannot be used for anything else. So divesting can be a good thing. It can work out very well for the municipality. Administration of our program. The program is run by our Environmental Advisory Council. All the approvals, however, go through the Board of Supervisors, as it should be. So the EAC just makes recommendations. The program is voluntary enrollment by landowners and residents. We have limited outreach. We do let people know that we're out there and we're interested, but it's very, again, voluntary enrollment. We're not trying to push people into things. We just want them to know what their options are. And a lot of people just don't know that. We do have an application form for people to fill out, which is very helpful on our end. We know if people have loans on the property that need to be dealt with as part of the process and so on. We conduct a review of their property with a desktop review with like the mapping that you have. We do a site walkover. We score the property. We have a scoring sheet. I'll show you that in a minute. We get our real estate appraisal for the highest and best use of the land under how it's zoned. And we do a title search to make sure we have clear title. And eventually, if things work out, we can make an offer to a landowner and hopefully it moves forward preserving it. This is a shot of our score sheet that we use. Again, I mentioned we are multifaceted. We have the farmland preservation and we have natural area. You're looking at the farmland preservation scoring sheet right here. So we have all these different questions that we ask, and basically we score that from a 0 through a 5. And then there's a multiplier on all those things. We come up with a score. And ultimately what we're getting is a score of 200 maximum points for farmland, and we have 200 maximum points for the natural areas. This is the natural area sheet that we use. And it's weighted because a lot of farms have both natural area and farmland on them. So it's weighted to the amount of acreage that is on the property. So we think this is a very fair way to score properties. It's very comparable from one property to the next. It doesn't matter how big or small properties are. Their score is very much, weighted and comparable to others. So this is a map of our open space preservation through probably about a year and a half ago. We've picked up some new properties since, but I showed you before that we just really had the game lands to the north, the bright green, and we had Jacobsburg, and that was pretty much it. The rest of our township did not have preserved land. All those other pieces that you see in there that are colored are now preserved through our open space program. There are two, the pinkish or brownish ones in the southwestern part of the township were done originally under our county farmland preservation program. So they are preserved under farmland preservation, but we don't have much. The Silvers Run, we had our water quality upgrade. I mentioned that before. I won't spend too much time on that. I think the one thing that it really does is protects us from certain bad land uses and certain discharges of polluted water into the stream that just cannot occur. We cannot have new wastewater treatment facilities create a stream discharge to that stream unless it's a repair of a malfunction. But we can't get new package treatment plants to support high density development and things like that. So the idea is the land uses are much more protected in the 10 square mile watershed of Silvers Run now because of the upgrade. So just to go through some of the properties that we preserved, kind of like what John had done. This was the Earhart farm, the Earhart properties. This was the whole reason that our program got off in the first place, was we were trying to figure out, before we ever did this, a way to preserve this farm. It's a beautiful farm in the northern part of the township. Never thought we'd get it. But the landowner actually did come to us after many years, and we were able to preserve this farm. It's about 150 plus acres. It was our largest remaining farm at that time. We have the Mineo Parcel, which is a wooded parcel along the Bushkill Creek. You see a shot of the creek there, and we can now open this up. It's 21 acres. We can open this up for public fishing, which we have. The Ballast Tract, which is one of our more exciting pieces. This was a piece where it was 90 acres. It was formerly slated for land development with 48 lots. It fell through at the very last minute in the the mid 2000s during the last real estate bust. But it was there, it was ready to go. And the landowner's son came to us and said, "Hey, my dad's not doing well. I've never wanted this property developed. I would love to preserve this. How can you work with us?" And we talked to the state, we talked to the county, we got state and county funds to go along with our funds. And I think we paid a pittance out of township funds using these other grant sources to preserve this property, 90 acres. It's one of the most beautiful views in our township. We've converted the farmland into a wildflower meadow, which is maintained annually. And we have beautiful trails all around the property through it. The pond is open for fishing, and this property is now being connected to our Township Trail, which is nearby in a corridor there you can see off to the west. So this was a plan that was done then by a professional planner for the development, if you want to call it that, of our preserve area, which was really a lot of restoration and trails. A shot of that parcel right after we had purchased it and the walking trail started going in. You can see the walking trail around the farm field there. And then the farm fields were converted to the wildflowers. The Heinzelman Tract is a 62-acre farm that, again, had a nice pond and it was a really nice farm site. We were able to preserve that and open that to the public. We had, again, had a plan done for the area we wanted to open to the public, and the remaining part of the farm is part of our hunter access program, which allows for geese hunting, actually. And that's it, because it's not safe too close to developed areas around Nazareth for any other hunting. These are just some shots of the pond. We've been having the pond cared for since then, and the fisheries get improved, and this is just a heavily used small pond in Bushkill Township. McMahon parcels, this is pretty unique. It's up against the Blue Mountain Ridge, mostly wooded, but you can see there's a parcel going more northeast to southwest. That's the old rail grade. We actually bought that as part of this, and that allows us to now extend our township trail off to the west. And I think we're going to be working with the county, with your brother on that. We're expanding our trail network, and we're doing a lot of this work as a result of having our open space program. Coal parcels, very similar. Won't spend really any time on that, but we ended up with, I want to say it was something like 3/4 of a mile of rail bed that we purchased. So that was a big chunk of a trail that would have otherwise been a headache going through private properties. The Fair parcel, the 29-acre parcel close to the borough of Nazareth. It was about 2/3 farmland, 1/3 natural area. Beautiful property. It's kind of the gateway into our township. We were able to preserve this as well. And we just divested this. And I can say that we brought in considerably more money with the divestiture than we spent on it. And all that money, that extra money, all goes into the open space program. So it just fuels more and more preservation now in our township. Very exciting for us. We just did this the other night, actually. What, divest it? Yeah. Because we didn't want to open it as a public use area. We did allow it as part of the hunter access program while we owned it, but it was a smaller piece, and we've already got 4 bigger parcels that we didn't want to add to that at this point.
But you did conserve it or have it?
Yeah, it's preserved. I mean, like, again, the
So
divestiture.
the object is to preserve the open space. Easements are a good way, or divestiture, once you put an easement, or
Yeah,
so it's just another tool.
Yeah, we would be hanging from the tallest trees on the Blue Mountain Ridge if we didn't preserve that property as part of the divestiture process. So it's now going to be a small farm. And I think one of the exciting things about this, the home site for the new farm, because there was no buildings on this property at all, is on the right side there. You can see what look like 2 lots. One is for the home, the other one is for outbuildings, support buildings for agriculture. And then up in the northeastern corner, we have a small area carved out along the road for a roadside stand, for a farm stand. So if this is going to be a small farm, people produce goods that can be sold and have a farm stand, they now have a place to do it. If we hadn't carved that out, and that's the only thing that can go there, and if we hadn't carved that out, they wouldn't have that option on their property because the conservation easement would not otherwise have allowed that. So it's just creative ways to, make this a viable farming parcel, which is what our residents wanted. They wanted farms and they wanted natural areas. So we're going to keep your farms. This is how we're going to do it. We have signage on all the properties that we preserve. The red signs are signs that do not allow for public access, and the green signs, next one, do allow public access. We're just letting people know that these properties are preserved and through the township and where their money's going. Some of our trail projects, we had our Township Trail, which is a 2-mile trail connection out of Jacobsburg to the north. That trail connection has spurred a ton of other trail work in our area. We're now branching out to the south and off to the sides to some of these other open space preserves that I just showed you pictures of, with new trails coming off this Township Trail. Eventually, our Township Trail will leave Jacobsburg, will go up to the Appalachian Trail, and it will also connect over into Plainfield, to the Plainfield Township Trail, down to Stockertown, which goes all the way down to Easton. So it's pretty exciting what we're doing with trails. And again, that's through the open space program. The Two Rivers Trail, Gap 9A, goes to the south out of Jacobsburg. And then the Northern Trail connector is going to be coming off of our trail going up to the Appalachian Trail. Here's a shot of our Township Trail. It's an old trolley bed. Next. Another shot of it soon after it was built. It's relatively straight, but it has its twists and turns and ups and downs, and it's a beautiful trail for hiking, biking, running. Gets a lot of use in the township. People are thrilled with it. And again, worked with PPL. We got it for $1. So we bought 2 miles of trail for $1. And then we built the trail ourselves. We rebuilt this bridge. Our Public Works Department rebuilt this bridge. It's been a fantastic thing. People love it. We also did some restoration work as part of all this. The last slide, it was an area along Sober's Run, our EV stream, that were severe erosion. It was just getting worse and worse over time. We had our Public Works Department come in and do a restoration project, which that's the same exact stretch that you're looking at right there. No more erosion, nice clean water for our trout. Another one, we had gabion baskets that were installed years ago that were falling into the stream. And this is an area heavily used by residents for fishing. And we replaced it with large stone and some deflectors. Still is a great place for people to go and fish, but now it's safe and it's a public use area. Next. So this is what Bushkill Township would have looked like without an open space program, without our unofficial map. And if you hit it again, this is what we look like now, 20 years later with that. And I would like to think that we're going to continue to preserve and protect the areas that our township residents want us to and make this map even better. We still allow for growth and development. We have 2 warehouses since this time. We've got many new housing developments, but you wouldn't necessarily know it. Everything's being done very well. So takeaways, it's never too late to preserve open space, start a program. Most of your residents are going to want open space. If you ask them and they understand it, they're going to want it. You want to create a positive vision about the program. You got to educate. Everybody needs to know about it and they need to understand it. You need to earn people's trust, and that can be a little bit difficult being in government today, but this is a great topic and it's easy to talk with people about. There will be opposition by some. Just cast it aside. If you got 70% of the people that want it, you're doing your job. Create a network of partners. The partners are all going to be there for you and will help to get the message out. Get professional help because as good as we all can become at this in our positions, you really need to have a professional engaged that can help you for the sticky moments where you don't have the answer. There are many great examples of successful open space programs now here in the Valley. Point to them when talking to people, point to them when saying this is what we want to do here. We're all out there and we're good models. And then just be patient, very patient. Good things take time. As John mentioned, it can take years and years and years to preserve properties, but you'll get them and you'll have a good program. And that's it. So thank you very much. I know that was a lot. This is a topic that could go on forever. There's a lot to it, but it's exciting stuff, and I hope you guys do well with it. Move forward.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
You said your EIT passed with a 2-to-1 vote.
Yes.
The average age of your residents?
That's a good question.
I'm going to ask you, John, also.
I'll tell you the average age of my community. We probably only have like 2 to 3 of the age of our 65 plus.
Our community is definitely younger than that. Our community is definitely younger than that on average. I don't know what the number is, but just thinking about what we have out there and the people that are moving in and whatnot, it's definitely a younger community, growing community. Yeah.
Before I ask a question, I want to thank both of you for giving this presentation tonight. It's very inspiring. You both townships have done an amazing job with preservation and protection of natural resources. So I don't want to forget to do that. I did have a question. You talked about open space being open to the public, and I see that you had just kind of, rock for trail. Is that basically what you do with the parcels that you do allow the public to go? It's just passive and you just have pretty much a walking path and people can wander and enjoy.
Yeah, the way we're set up with our open space program, there's no active recreation allowed on these parcels. That would be against the language that was used for the creation of the program. So we can't do that, and that's good because if you could, people would. Maybe not us, maybe not our board, but maybe the next board. So it's set up very well. It's protected to move forward in the right direction from that, being a natural areas type program. We tend to use gravel trails. You wouldn't have to. I mean, you could use paved trails. There's occasions when maybe for ADA compliance, for universal access, you might have paved components to your projects. I think the main thing is to make sure the uses are passive, that they are in line with your program.
I'd like to respond to that also.
Sure.
Okay, I will turn that on. We use all types of trail material. We use crushed stone where it's appropriate. We use porous macadam, permeable macadam, where the water can flow through it. We use regular macadam if it's an erosion type situation. But our most popular on our wild wooded trails are wood chips, and we get those for free. Nice price. We have the local tree trimmers. They chop the stuff up, they stack it up, we let it sit for a year in a vacant field. Then we have all the free trail service we want. Now, wood chips are certainly not going to be ADA compliant, but the areas where I'm using the wood chips, they're not going to be there. Okay, So you have a lot of options. And the neat thing about hiring a consultant, a lot of the grants, you can get a grant to pay for your consultant. Okay? So don't let that be a stopper. Okay? For example, if you want to upgrade your official map, you can apply to LVG, get a grant to update your official map. Now, they're going to ask you to have a match. It might be 50%. If things are good for you, you might say, hey, I'll pay 75%. Take the 25, okay? So there's a lot of wheeling and dealing you can do. And like I said, you talk to the businesses within your community, okay? Some of them will help you.
Yeah, I'd say because of the unique characteristics of many open space properties, you don't have, not every component has to be universal access or ADA compliant. In some cases, it's not feasible. The main thing is to try to have it as compliant as possible. But many trails, a lot of these single track trails like John's talking about, they wouldn't be. That's okay.
I have trails going through an extreme glacial till area with limestone outcroppings. It's risky for anyone, okay? That being said, steep slopes, you can't have people on steep slope areas. Jacobsburg prevents people from going on steep slope areas. You have wetlands with critical creatures. With the Mincy Lake corridor, there's about 300 acres where we're trying to keep people out completely, okay? Completely. So each site determines the type of access you will have. Generally, when you talk about athletic fields, that's something your rec department has in certain particular places, okay? Open space funds, as Jason stressed, you're trying to preserve habitat, view sheds, period. Well, on farmland, I'm big on that. I told you that before, okay? And that's another thing. You can play let's make a deal. If you're having a hard time with farmland preservation saying they're only paying so much, you have farmland preservation pay for the farm, you pay for the woodlands, the streams, the wetlands. With Maria Benzoni, we're able to play let's make a deal. Like I said, our little township put 600,000 into that. It doesn't sound like much, but our township budget, once again, is $1.2 million. So it's very important to us and our community. And you have to keep on telling your community of your successes. That's the important part.
And landowners that may just want a conservation easement, they're not selling fee simple to the township, they're just selling a conservation easement. They may not want public access to their property, and that's okay. You know, it's maybe a bargaining chip for them. Maybe they say, hey, you know, we know that we want to preserve, and so does this guy over here, and you only have so much money. We'll allow public access if it gives us a few more points. Our scoring sheet allows for that. We give a little more credit for when they do allow it. So, and you know, it's important to understand what's the potential of public access. I mean, some parcels don't really have it. If it's just farmland and there's really not good hunting or fishing, what else really would that parcel offer people? So it may not be appropriate for public access. So that's just a component that can be part of preservation.
Thank you. Any other questions? I had one other. You mentioned activating an EAC. Ours has not been very active recently. And one of the things you said was they were administering the funds and making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. What other tasks do you have assigned to that particular council?
To the EAC, well, I'm the longtime chairman of it, so I better be able to answer this. So we help with plan reviews. Not only the Planning Commission is seeing plans, but the Environmental Advisory Council does too. And so with our official map, we handle the compliance concerns with the official map and with all the environmental aspects of our ordinances. So we provide then a report to the Planning Commission of the environmental concerns that we might have for a development plan that comes in. So that's one thing we do. We help with the township's cleanup day and rain barrel program. Obviously, the open space is a big component for us. We also help with grant writing. Boy, there's just so many things that an EAC can do. And you know, it's kind of the sky's the limit with that, or you can really narrow the focus to just certain tasks. You know, it's whatever the Board of Supervisors would assign to an EAC.
And the key word is the second letter A, advisory.
Yes.
Okay? They have to go to the board to expend funds. They provide recommendations. Okay, our EAC is very active, and we have an open space committee. The both of them are working on our comprehensive plan, and the both of them are working together to update to complete our first official map. Okay, but then I have two board members there, but they're advisory, the boards, you have to delegate some of your authority, but you make the final decision no matter what happens. Okay?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
And we've helped with the open space property development, where to put trails and things like that. We help with the planning process. We do have professional planners, but they meet with the EAC before taking it to the supervisors.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can I add one other thing?
Of course.
It's a neat way of getting more people involved with the township government to have an EAC and or open space committee. Okay? You'll hook people into what's going on, and that's someone else who's pushing your plan.
And that would be a critical part of helping to educate the public.
You got it. To get that EIT
partner in
tax,
with-
you need more people out in the community. It just takes one person to talk to another person, with Facebook. They put one negative idea out there. I'm the chairman of Friends of Mincy Lake. It's a county lake. It's owned by the Fish Commission. The county leases it for 25 years. One guy on Facebook stated that Mincy Lake was completely grown in with vegetation. It's a 117-acre lake. 80 of it is free and clear. I had to make a Facebook video in a kayak showing the open space. That one guy had like 4,000 likes, and we decided, put the kayak in the lake. We got to go out there and show them what is there. So you are going to have a PR battle, okay? But the rewards of winning will make it even more of a win as you go. Every future, you preserve that first property, the word gets out, okay? No one wants to be the first. You make that first sale, that first buy, you get the word out there. I taught 8th grade math. I had to be a car salesman, okay? You can do this, and it's fun. You make a lot of friends, okay?
Yeah, it's been
I'm
great.
friends with his brother and his father, and I hope to be a friend with Randy.
It's been a great program for our township, no questions asked. We've really had almost no bad things over the 20 years that I've been involved with this. It's just gotten better and better over time. So, hope it goes that way for you guys.
Anything else for our guests? Anybody else have any questions? And
Thank
Dave or Randy also, I don't mean to say just the board. No, we're good. Well, thank you both. Appreciate all of the information you shared with us tonight.
It's an exciting time. You're going to enjoy it.
Thank you. You both
Thank
have beautiful townships. All right, so the next portion of our agenda is just for our board to discuss the information we've heard tonight. Is there any comments that we want to kind of kick around before we close the meeting? Randy, any thoughts?
This was simply added to see if the board's interested in, I guess, moving forward with some sort of program here in the township and what those next steps might be. I think we've heard a lot of information here tonight. Again, thank you to the speakers for their wonderful PowerPoint presentations and their success stories. And, they're certainly leaders in the field, and there's a reason we've asked them to come here tonight. I think they've shared a lot of information for us to consider. At this point, I think the board, it'd be valuable to have a discussion in terms of the township here in South Whitehall and where we see things moving forward.
Thank you. I was curious when Jason mentioned Lehigh Valley Greenways for a grant to help with the official map. Is that something that the township has ever considered?
They're relatively smaller grants, mini grants, if you will, but they can support some neat initiatives.
One of the things that they mentioned is consultants. A lot of that capabilities we have in-house. I used to be one of those consultants. So a lot of, I can do the official map. There's GIS things that can be done in-house. So we don't need to hire the consultants.
Okay.
Again, when we get into that, I'll let you know what is in-house and things that we would need outside consultants help with. But a lot of the mapping piece, especially mapping, if there's anything to do with maps, I'm the guy.
And that portion of the comp plan will happen, the official map will happen after the work is done on the comp plan and after it's gone to the Board of Commissioners for approval? Or is it in tandem?
The timing we have to kind of look at. If there's things that come out of the comp plan and the process, and as the process evolves and we get a better understanding of the direction the township wants to go, we can certainly run things in tandem or have it queued up ready to go immediately after. We'll have to look at the regulations on, they mentioned you have to have the comp plan and then the official map, but we'll look into that. And again, having everything ready to go. And I mentioned it last night, if things bubble to the surface and we want to get something done right away, we can certainly move forward with it as long as we're allowed to. So we'll see. And a lot of the mapping that I showed can get rolled into the official map. It's a pretty easy transition to get to that next piece.
And my last question, I promise. He mentioned multi-municipal planning, something that I've talked about a number of times, both here and as a planning commission member. And I know the township hasn't really taken any steps that I'm aware of in a public meeting. Maybe you've done it in the CD department, but I know it's late in the process for us, but I'm going to ask the question again. Is that something we should look into? Would there be a benefit to us? Is it something we should at least explore before we get a completed plan? If there are benefits, I wouldn't want to see us miss them.
Yeah, I don't know that the timing of it, we couldn't roll this into a multi-municipal plan because we would have to do all the planning work for the other municipalities. But I do think once we have the completed plan, speaking to neighboring municipalities, getting a feel for what their goals are, what they're looking to accomplish, to see if it makes sense to partner with other municipalities. Because the only way it works, and he mentioned it, is if you have people signing the agreement. I know one of the downsides with multi-municipal plans is a municipality will back out. And then that kind of leaves you readjusting and relooking at the plan for the joint zoning. And the idea of not necessarily joint zoning, but the idea of not planning for all uses, those uses have to go somewhere within that multi-municipal plan. So you have to have a partner willing to take those other uses. So that's why I think once we have our plan together, and I kind of envisioned this being a implementable item that we start talking to neighboring municipalities to see if there's an opportunity for cooperation. If we have something that they don't necessarily want, like an amusement park, we have it, so we have it zoned for it. That could be an opportunity for us to work with somebody else. The unique thing with South Whitehall is we have a lot of uses. We're pretty unique in that, we're first ring suburb of Allentown, and then we also have the open space. So we're a pretty unique area in the Lehigh Valley with all types of uses. One of the things that worries me or concerns me is the neighboring municipality pointing to us and saying, well, you already have development close to the infrastructure, you have the infrastructure, you should take the development and we should preserve. So that's the concern. But I think having workshop meetings with those neighboring municipalities, once we get our idea, we can talk to them and say, this is what we're looking at doing and what are your thoughts? And then going that way with it.
I guess just to add to that, since we don't have a lot of preserved land for the square miles that we have, if we were to partner with a municipality that did have a lot of preservation, maybe there would be a trade-off and a benefit to us to actually expand our resource protections. Just a
Yeah,
thought.
and yes, absolutely. And I'm not discounting the idea at all. I think when it makes sense and you have a willing partner, it can be great. But it's having those conversations before you jump into a multi-municipal plan are important. So everybody goes into it understanding what everybody wants and is on the same page. Sometimes they move forward and then it gets to the last minute and people drop out. But absolutely looking into it, trying to build that partnership is worthwhile.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions from the board?
Would you like some comments? I'll share comments that I shared with the 4 other commissioners during the past month. This is very high level. It's strategic. This was work in progress 2 years ago before we went on hold. It's reflected in everything we heard tonight, the different presentations. So there's an approach where you define the opportunities. David is well underway to do that with the GIS mapping. You define the land preservation costs to the best of your ability. Then you defined what monies are available without raising taxes. And then by difference, you decide whether you want to raise taxes or not, and what's the right time frame to do that. So that's a high level approach that we were about to do when we put work on hold 2 years ago. To me, it's the natural high level objective that the board should have. And again, it's reflected in everything that we heard tonight. I proposed that could be done at a very high level and maybe come back with a report to the board, to see what the board wants to do. The only timing sensitivity is, and I'm not saying I'm in favor of this or not in any way whatsoever. I'm just providing info. If you wanted to put an EIT referendum on the November ballot, the deadline to do that is, I believe, August 9th. So you would have to make a decision. So I think it would be advisable in a June timeframe whether you want to do that or not in order to prepare it. We do have many examples of other referendums, so might economize the amount of work required to get it done. That's just a high level view of I think what a township might do at the very front end to set some direction.
And I think one of the, we've talked about it before, is timing. There may be things that are important that get identified through this process of the comp plan update that if it's something that Planning Commission, Board of Commissioners feel that an EIT is the right way to go, and the timing for it to get it on the next ballot is August, that is something that we can certainly push forward. It was recommended in the last comp plan, so it's not like we're pulling it out of thin air. So it's something that's been discussed or been thought of in that 2009 plan. I don't. It. I guess timing wasn't right. Maybe. Who knows? One of the things that we're talking about for this new comp plan is documenting decisions. So if there was a decision not to pursue something, why did they decide that? So when new boards change, the new board can look at it and say, all right, in 2016, they decided not to do this because of X, Y, and Z. And having that record is very important moving forward. So, right now, we don't have any record as to why. But moving forward, it's something that we want to kind of build into that plan.
It was important to me to have some type of safeguard for those goals because some of the ones in 2009 just didn't come to fruition because it was just shelved. So.
Yeah, and exactly. Some of it was, the language was pretty amorphous and consider. It doesn't say who to consider, who's going to consider it. Doesn't lay out, a process for what consider means. So it could have just been two people talking and decided not to do it. So it wasn't like an action taken. So those are things that, again, for this new plan, we want to build in exactly what we mean by consider an EIT.
I guess one of the questions that came up in my mind, and we talked about this a little last night with the EAC, ours is not populated and it's not been utilized in quite some time. And that's one of the things that we certainly need to get activated because it, at least based on the discussion we heard tonight, was very instrumental in the education portion of an EIT. And, I think as a township, we want to do this right.
Yes.
And I'm in as much of a hurry as anyone else is, but I think I would want to step back and ask what foundational groundwork do we need to have in place to build for success? Because
So with regards to the EAC, there are two members on it, Brian Height and
Barry.
apologies,
Barry.
Barry Search. And it's in our ordinance. I have it in front of me, and one of the questions was, what are the tasks? I can read through those. I think it might be helpful. So duties, this is again in the ordinance, to identify environmental problems and recommend plans and programs for conservation of natural resources and protection and improvement of environmental quality. B, in conjunction with Park and Rec Board to make recommendations as to possible use of open land areas. C, to promote a community environmental program. D, to keep an index of all open areas, publicly or privately owned, including but not limited to flood-prone areas, swamps, and other unique areas for the purpose of obtaining information of the proper use of such areas. E, to advise the appropriate township governmental agency in the acquisition of property, both real and personal, by gift, purchase, grant, bequest, easement, device, or lease in matters dealing with purposes of this article. So there's already some groundwork for that environmental advisory committee or council that have been laid out by ordinance and it's already in place. There's two members there. So I was curious and I probably should have asked, but the Lower Mount Bethel, Lower.
Lower.
Had both an open space committee and an EAC. I was curious as to what the distinction between those two was. Should have asked, but we can follow up with them and get that. So, and then in the chat, we also have the Green Advisory Committee. But I think, I don't know, I don't have the bylaws in front of me. I guess I can look it up online, but I think they were more of action items and less of it, I guess, smaller picture detail stuff, and the EAC seems to be more of a big picture. Kind of a distinction that I make in my head. Could be wrong.
I certainly think it could be helpful to have a well-populated EAC to be reviewing plans and working with the Planning Commission, looking at natural resources.
And one of the things that I've noticed in other municipalities that I've worked with is oftentimes there's a BOC member that is on some of these committees, and we have that now with public safety. Having the BOC member on these committees, that member or members becomes a champion for that committee when it comes time for BOC to make decisions. But I see wisdom in going in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. It certainly allows for good communication between the two boards. Yep, we will move on to agenda item. If there's no more discussion on the specific presentation tonight, we can move on to agenda item 5, which is a motion. And we have a motion on our agenda tonight to appoint 2 commissioners to the South Whitehall Township Land Preservation Committee. So I will open the floor if anyone would like to make a nomination to serve on that committee.
Make a motion to,
Okay, we have 1 commissioner nominated. Is there a second?
I wish Brad was here because I would nominate Brad. Yeah, but he said he would reconsider.
Well, but the email that I got said he
I
withdrew
did.
his
I
support
thought
for
you
that.
withdrew it.
That's the last
That's
communication.
the last I heard.
I think we should open it to him and ask him again.
I have a general comment, not about this specific subject.
Do you know specifically about Brad?
No, and
We're on the motion.
I know. My general comment is we need to conduct our business here and not via emails that are being written. That's just my general comment.
So since we only have 1 commissioner to appoint tonight, is it the pleasure of the board to proceed with that, or should we postpone this motion until our next meeting, which is next week, when we'll have a full complement of commissioners in case Commissioner Osborne is interested in serving?
I think we should appoint and wait until the next meeting.
I would agree to that.
I agree.
All in agreement for that?
I agree with that.
Okay, so we have a motion to appoint Michael Wilk to the committee.
I would second that.
The motion is second on the floor. All in favor of appointing Mike Wilk to the South Whitehall Township Land Preservation Committee, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0.
So commissioners, while we're on this subject, is it something you all would like added to the April 20th Board of Commissioners meeting next Wednesday?
I would be in agreement with that, so we can have a second commissioner.
Very good.
Yes,
I'll have Tracy update the agenda tomorrow. Thank you.
thank you. We have no non-agenda items. We have, agenda item 7, courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to make any comments? Okay, Hearing and seeing none, there's no executive session for the night, so we need a motion to adjourn. I'll second that motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone.